There's so many coincidences, so many odd things that just don't add up. Everything sort of smells.
I believe they are withholding some of the documents at the request of the British Secret Service.
Princess Diana's words have echoed through time. Her compassion, her strength, her heartbreak. Yet one message remained hidden, sealed away from the world she once captivated. It wasn't a public statement or royal address, but a deeply personal letter written to her beloved son, Prince William. Now, after years of silence, that lost letter has surfaced, revealing emotions she could never voice aloud. So, what final truth did she want her son to know before fate intervened? Stay with us as we uncover Princess Diana's lost letter to Prince William. Princess Diana's hidden letters, the truth beneath the royal seal. It began quietly, almost too quietly, for the magnitude of what was about to unfold. In July 2004, inside a modest London auction house, an unassuming catalog entry caught the attention of a few sharp-eyed collectors. No royal announcement, no headline-breaking discovery, just a small description buried between pages of antique jewelry and fine art. Yet that simple listing held something far more valuable than gold. A private collection of Princess Diana's handwritten letters. These were not official notes drafted by palace aides or polished statements approved for public release. They were Diana's own words, unguarded, tender, and achingly human. The letters had once belonged to Violet Collison, a woman who had been much more than a housekeeper to the Spencer family. For decades, Violet had been a quiet presence in Diana's life, witnessing her transformation from a shy schoolgirl at Althorpe into a radiant young woman destined to marry a future king. When Violet passed away, her family discovered the letters tucked away like hidden treasures, bundled with ribbons, their pages carrying the delicate scent of old paper and faint traces of perfume. Among them was a letter dated 8th July 1981, written just weeks before Diana's wedding to Prince Charles. The world still remembers that fairy tale ceremony, the silk gown with a 25-foot train, the crowds lining London's streets, the billions who watched on television. But the Diana revealed in that letter was not the picture-perfect bride the cameras captured. Her words told of fittings that never seemed to end, endless lists of guests she didn't know, and royal rules that made her head spin. Yet amid the chaos, she found humor in it all, joking that everyone's rushing around like headless chickens while the bride remains perfectly calm. It was that light-hearted honesty, that ability to laugh even when overwhelmed, that made the public fall in love with her. As the years unfolded, the tone of her letters shifted. The playful scrawls of a young princess gave way to reflections filled with deeper emotion. Loneliness, determination, and an unwavering devotion to her two sons. One particularly touching letter, dated June 21, 1989, offered a glimpse into the kind of mother she was. Written on Kensington Palace stationery, it was addressed to Sergeant George Plum of the Special Escort Group, thanking him for organizing a motorbike display for William's 7th birthday. "It was so nice of you and your team to come," she wrote warmly. "I can't tell you how much joy the show brought to all those kids and their mothers." Beneath her graceful signature were the small, uneven scribbles of William and Harry, their childish handwriting capturing a moment of pure happiness far removed from the pressures of palace life. But the letter that stunned the auction staff most was one written to Violet, in which Diana described William standing up for a classmate being bullied. Her pride leapt off the page. She wrote that while her son might be a prince by birth, it was his compassion that made him truly noble. Auction staff who read her words admitted they felt as though she were in the room with them, her handwriting full of energy, her thoughts alive with emotion. Experts later noted that Diana often wrote her most heartfelt letters late at night, long after official duties had ended. When the palace halls fell silent, she would retreat into herself, choosing her own stationery over the royal crest. It was her way of separating Diana the mother from Diana the princess. In those quiet moments, her words became more than ink. They were the pulse of a woman struggling to balance love and duty. When the letters finally went under the hammer, the world watched in astonishment. Collectors and museums battled fiercely, driving the prices far beyond expectation. Over £20,000 for a single note describing William's first day at school. But what truly gave the letters their worth wasn't the paper or the signature. It was the voice they carried. A voice stripped of titles and expectations, revealing a woman of empathy, humor, and remarkable strength. Through these letters, the public glimpsed the side of Diana that no televised interview could ever capture. A mother determined to raise her sons to see the world beyond the palace gates. She wanted them to ride buses, eat at fast food restaurants, and know the lives of ordinary people. It was her quiet rebellion against the formality that had defined royal childhoods for generations. These hidden letters, written in moments of solitude and affection, offered something rare. A glimpse of Diana not as a global icon, but as a mother, a friend, and a woman whose humanity refused to be confined by palace walls. But what unexpected steps did she take to protect her sons from the crushing weight of royal life? Let's find out. Princess Diana's unseen devotion. Princess Diana's life was never just about public appearances or royal protocol. Beneath the global fascination, she was first and foremost a mother, determined to give William and Harry a childhood that felt real, even within the gilded walls of Kensington Palace. She understood that growing up as a prince could easily trap a child in a bubble of privilege, cut off from ordinary joys and the simple lessons of everyday life. From the very beginning, Diana sought to expose her sons to experiences that would teach them empathy, kindness, and resilience. Trips to amusement parks, walks on public buses, or shared meals at humble cafes were not mere photo opportunities. They were deliberate steps to let her children understand the world beyond the palace gates. Yet Diana's devotion extended far beyond ordinary outings. She recognized the relentless glare of the media and the pressure it could place on young hearts. Every carefully arranged photograph, every officially sanctioned moment, whether it was William's first day at school or a family vacation, was part of a balancing act. She gave the public just enough glimpses to satisfy curiosity while fiercely protecting her son's privacy. Behind the polished images, Diana's letters reveal her tireless effort to manage this delicate equilibrium. Handwritten notes to confidants, often filled with maternal pride, were glimpses of a woman striving to shield her children from the harsh realities that fame would inevitably bring. One striking feature of these letters, rediscovered in a London auction in July 2004, was their intimacy. They were never meant for public eyes, yet they spoke volumes about her priorities, her fears, and her love. By the time the collection resurfaced, William was already a young man at university, carrying forward lessons shaped by his mother's care. Reading her words, one could see how deeply Diana had prepared her sons for the weight of their public lives, instilling in them values she believed mattered more than titles. The letters were not just accounts of daily events. They were evidence of a deliberate, loving strategy to guide her children toward compassion and understanding in a world that often demanded polished appearances over authenticity. Diana's protective instincts often took subtle, quiet forms. She would write late at night, after official duties had ended, using her personal stationery instead of palace-issued paper. This small gesture allowed her the freedom to reflect honestly, to write from the heart without the constraints of royal expectation. Letters describing William's first school experiences or playful anecdotes about Harry's antics reveal a side of Diana, unseen, in documentaries or photographs. A mother who delighted in her children's discoveries and celebrated their small victories. Each word, each careful detail carried her wish for them to grow with a sense of balance and moral grounding. In these pages, one also senses Diana's silent rebellion against tradition. While royal protocol emphasized distance and decorum, she chose closeness, laughter, and hands-on parenting. She wanted her sons to know the world, not just observe it from a throne of privilege. She orchestrated experiences that encouraged curiosity, empathy, and a genuine understanding of life beyond the palace walls. Through every note and memory, she subtly built a bridge between the extraordinary and the ordinary, ensuring that William and Harry could grow into men who valued character and connection over ceremony and expectation. These letters, once hidden and now revealed, do more than preserve history. They capture the essence of Diana's motherly devotion, her quiet courage, and her determination to raise sons who could face the world with compassion and integrity. They remind us that before William and Harry became symbols of a global monarchy, they were simply two young boys being shaped by a mother who refused to let their extraordinary circumstances overshadow the fundamentals of a loving childhood. Did her approach to raising her children cultivate strength, empathy, and a genuine link to the world outside the palace? Let's discover Princess Diana's revolutionary approach to motherhood. On June 21, 1982, the world celebrated the birth of Prince William. Yet behind the ceremonial fanfare and palace announcements, something quietly extraordinary was unfolding. At just 20 years old, Princess Diana was redefining what it meant to be a mother within the royal family. For generations, royal children had been raised under strict rules, distant parents, nannies in charge, and lives shaped more by protocol than affection. Diana refused to follow that path. From the moment William was born, she insisted on keeping him close, placing his crib beside her own bed rather than surrendering him to the distant royal nursery. Her decisions were radical by palace standards. She breastfed William herself, defying centuries of tradition where wet nurses had done the task, and she chose his name independently, signaling an early refusal to let protocol dictate every detail of her motherhood. Weeks later, when Prince Charles planned a trip to Australia, Diana refused to leave William behind. Either he traveled with her, or she wouldn't go. She carried him across the airport tarmac herself, a gesture both tender and defiant, underscoring her commitment to being present in every moment of his early life. As William grew, Diana's hands-on approach continued. She enrolled him in a regular nursery school near Kensington Palace, breaking away from the tradition of private tutors and formal, isolated education for royal children. She personally dropped him off and picked him up, insisting on hearing firsthand about his day rather than relying on reports from staff. Bath times became lively family rituals, and when William, or his younger brother Harry, fell ill, Diana often slept beside them on the bedroom floor, refusing to maintain the emotional distance expected of royal parents. Diana's vision for her sons extended far beyond the walls of the palace. She wanted them to understand life as ordinary children experienced it. She took them to amusement parks, let them eat ice cream that dripped onto their clothes, and even rode public buses with them. These outings were not publicity stunts. They were lessons in empathy, humility, and connection. Diana wanted William and Harry to feel the world around them, to meet people from all walks of life, and to learn firsthand about compassion and responsibility. She introduced them to her charity work, bringing William to visit Centrepoint, a shelter for young homeless people in London. There, he encountered lives far removed from royal privilege, witnessing struggles that would shape his understanding of his own role in the world. Discipline under Diana's care was equally revolutionary. Rather than insisting her children conform to a rigid standard of perfection, she encouraged them to express their emotions. Tantrums were met not with scolding but with attentive listening. She knelt at their level, guided them through their feelings, and showed that vulnerability could coexist with strength, a lesson unheard of in traditional royal parenting. Every act, from school drop-offs to seaside adventures, reflected Diana's determination to balance love with guidance, privilege with understanding, and tradition with innovation. By the time Harry was born in 1984, the two boys had already experienced a childhood vastly different from that of previous generations of royals. They were nurtured, observed, and allowed small freedoms that fostered resilience and empathy. Through her unorthodox choices, Diana ensured that her sons would grow not only into public figures, but into individuals capable of navigating the pressures of fame with compassion and humanity. Her mothering went beyond affection or rebellion. It was a deliberate shaping of character. Each everyday moment, every playful outing, every intimate conversation was a lesson, carefully planned and executed, to instill in William and Harry the values she held dear. In doing so, Diana didn't merely raise princes, she transformed the very definition of royal childhood, leaving an enduring legacy of love, courage, and humanity. But how could the same woman who redefined royal motherhood find herself trapped in a life that felt increasingly loveless? Keep watching to uncover the heartbreaking contrast. Shadows over the fairy tale. At first glance, Diana's life seemed to mirror a perfect royal dream. Two beautiful sons, global admiration, and a husband destined for the throne. Yet behind palace walls, cracks had already begun to appear. Subtle at first, but impossible to ignore. The young woman who had once brought warmth and spontaneity into royal life now found herself surrounded by a chill she couldn't escape. While Diana poured her energy into nurturing William and Harry, Prince Charles's heart seemed to drift elsewhere, toward a woman whose name Diana could never avoid hearing, Camilla Parker Bowles. From early on, Diana sensed something was wrong. In private letters to friends, she revealed moments of growing loneliness, confessing that her marriage was not the fairy tale the public believed. One note, written around 1985, captured her quiet despair. She described feeling trapped and undesirable, as though the walls of Kensington Palace had become her cage. She began to see how deeply Charles's connection to Camilla lingered, not just as friendship, but as a bond that never truly ended. Those closest to her noticed the change. The radiant, laughing young princess who once broke protocol with her warmth now seemed burdened by invisible weight. She still smiled for the cameras, still played joyfully with her sons. But behind closed doors, tears replaced laughter. When Charles and Camilla's relationship could no longer be dismissed as gossip, Diana's insecurities deepened. She once described her marriage as a bit crowded, a phrase that would later echo around the world. The public saw glimpses of this turmoil in 1995 when Diana sat down for her now infamous BBC Panorama interview. Dressed in a simple black suit, her composure was fragile but fearless. She spoke candidly about her struggles, about feeling isolated and betrayed, and about her determination to continue her royal duties despite the pain. "There were 3 of us in this marriage," she said softly, her words slicing through years of secrecy. It wasn't an act of revenge, it was liberation. The world watched as the princess who once embodied fairy tale perfection reclaimed her voice, exposing the emotional wounds hidden beneath royal polish. Camilla's quiet presence in Charles's life, often lurking in the background of royal events or whispered about by the press, had become an undeniable reality. For Diana, the betrayal wasn't just personal, it was public. Letters from that time reveal how deeply she longed for emotional connection, writing about her need to be loved, not admired. Yet through the heartbreak, she found strength in motherhood. Her sons became her anchor, her reason to rise each morning. As the marriage unraveled, Diana began turning her focus outward, to her boys and the world beyond palace gates. The heartbreak that once threatened to consume her gradually reshaped her purpose. She sought meaning through compassion, teaching William and Harry lessons that no royal tutor could provide. The woman who had once redefined royal motherhood was about to take it a step further, by showing her sons the beauty, struggle, and humanity of the world outside the palace walls. But how close was Princess Dia to her children? Let's find out. A mother's lesson beyond palace walls. The walls of Kensington Palace gleamed with history, but to Diana they sometimes felt like a cage lined with gold. She knew what life behind those gates could do, how it silenced laughter, replaced curiosity with caution, and turned childhood into a ceremony. For William and Harry, she wanted something else entirely. Not a life of rehearsed smiles and measured gestures, but one filled with genuine experiences, muddy shoes, and moments that felt real. So she tore down the invisible walls that had protected royal children for generations. With a scarf over her hair and sunglasses hiding her famous eyes, Diana would slip away from the palace with her boys for what she called their normal days. She would park several streets away, leave most of the security behind, and walk hand in hand with William and Harry into an ordinary McDonald's. The boys loved it, not just for the happy meals, but because their mother was laughing, relaxed, just mummy. People rarely believed what they were seeing. A princess waiting in line at a fast food counter seemed more like a dream than reality. These little adventures were more than fun. They were lessons in humility and perspective. Diana wanted her sons to understand the world they would someday serve. She took them on the London Underground, teaching them how to buy tickets and read maps. Once, when the train broke down between stations, she whispered lessons about patience and kindness while commuters sighed around them. To her, these were moments of growth no royal tutor could teach. She made sure her sons saw both joy and struggle. Amusement parks replaced private gardens, roller coasters replaced formal ceremonies, and queues became equalizers where even princes had to wait their turn. But the most important lessons came when she brought them face to face with lives unlike their own. At just 9 years old, William accompanied her to Centrepoint, a charity supporting homeless youth in London. It wasn't a polished royal visit. Diana wanted him to sit, listen, and truly understand. He met teenagers who slept in parks and searched for food in bins. The stories were heavy, but Diana believed empathy had to be felt, not taught from a distance. By the early 1990s, as her marriage to Charles unraveled in public view, those lessons became her anchor. When everything else seemed uncertain, motherhood was the one role she never wavered in. She personally met with her son's teachers at Wetherby and Ludgrove, choosing schools that valued kindness over prestige. Even as the royal facade began to crumble, she was determined that her boys would grow up grounded, protected by her love rather than the monarchy's rules. When the truth of her heartbreak finally reached the world through her 1995 BBC interview, Diana's words revealed both her pain and her purpose. She spoke not as a princess, but as a mother, determined to raise sons who understood emotion, compassion, and the strength of vulnerability. "There were 3 of us in this marriage," she said softly, her honesty echoing around the globe. Yet even then her focus was clear: William and Harry. After her divorce in 1996, Diana lost her royal title, but she never lost her sense of purpose. She told friends that while she might no longer be Her Royal Highness, she would always be Mummy. William's quiet reassurance. "Don't worry, Mummy, I'll give it back to you one day," was a glimpse of the bond that defined them. Through every challenge, Diana's mission remained the same: to raise sons who would see the world not through palace windows, but through human eyes. And soon, that bond the unbreakable connection between Diana, William, and Harry would shape not only their futures, but the future of the royal family itself. But how did she manage to shield them when her own fairy tale began to fall apart? Keep watching to find out. The breaking point. The walls of Kensington Palace, once steeped in tradition and ceremony, began to feel heavier in 1992, the year the separation between Princess Diana and Prince Charles was officially announced. The palace, a symbol of continuity and protocol, suddenly became a stage for tension and quiet heartbreak. Diana, however, refused to let the fracture define her role as a mother. William, just 10, and Harry, 8, became the center of her world. She orchestrated their daily routines, oversaw school assignments, attended sports matches, and carved out moments of normalcy in the midst of extraordinary circumstances. Every decision she made was guided by a determination to protect them from the storm raging behind palace doors. The cracks in the marriage were no secret to the public. On June 29, 1994, Prince Charles admitted on television to an affair that had long been whispered about in the tabloids. Less than a year later, Diana seized her own moment of revelation. On November 20, 1995, she spoke candidly in a BBC Panorama interview, watched by over 22 million viewers in the United Kingdom alone. Her words revealed a woman confronting loneliness, mental strain, and the pressures of royal life, yet her concern for her children remained paramount. She expressed, with unflinching honesty, the desire for William and Harry to grow up not just as heirs to a throne, but as empathetic, emotionally aware human beings. Behind the scenes, the separation carried deeper wounds. Biographers Tina Brown and Sally Bedell Smith describe Diana's devastation when Queen Elizabeth II, after consultations with advisors, including the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Prime Minister, urged her to formalize the divorce. Her trusted butler, Paul Burrell, later shared that she had hoped for time for space to maintain some semblance of continuity, rather than an abrupt severing of ties. Even amidst heartbreak and public scrutiny, Diana's focus never wavered from her children, shaping a daily life where love, guidance, and security became her quiet rebellion against the instability surrounding her. In every letter she penned and every choice she made, Diana's voice, as a mother, echoed louder than the headlines. She navigated a world of royal expectation and public fascination, balancing personal grief with unwavering devotion to her sons, setting the stage for the lessons, values, and resilience she would continue to impart. A life beyond the palace walls. When Diana stepped away from royal duties, it wasn't an escape. It was a rebirth. Gone were the rigid schedules and endless ceremonies. In their place came a life guided by purpose and empathy. She had once represented the crown, but now she represented the people, those unheard and unseen. Rather than juggling over 100 patronages, she chose a few causes that deeply resonated with her heart: children's hospitals, AIDS awareness, homelessness, and the global fight against leprosy. Each appearance, each handshake, carried warmth that no royal decree could command. Her independence, however, did not mean distance from her sons. If anything, it drew them closer. Diana built her days around William and Harry's routines: school drop-offs, sports matches, and quiet dinners at Kensington Palace. Teachers remembered her as approachable and deeply involved, a mother who knew her sons' favorite subjects, their fears, and their dreams. She wanted them to grow up grounded, connected to the world beyond palace gates. Yet, beneath her radiant public smile, a quieter unease lingered. Without the shield of royal protection, Diana often felt vulnerable. In a letter she wrote to her trusted butler Paul Burrell in October 1995, she confessed her fears, terrifying thoughts of a planned accident that might end her life. Whether rooted in anxiety or genuine danger, Those words revealed the deep isolation that shadowed her freedom. Still, she refused to retreat. Courage became her armor. In January 1997, she walked through a live minefield in Angola wearing a flak jacket and visor, an act that transformed global awareness of landmine victims. That single image, Diana, head held high amid danger, captured everything she had become: fearless, compassionate, and determined to make the world pay attention. Her journey wasn't only about changing how people saw her, it was about shaping how her sons would see themselves. "Use your position to help those who have no voice," she once told William, a message that would echo long after her final days. Through each lesson and every act of kindness, Diana was preparing her boys for a life beyond privilege, one where empathy would matter more than titles. Little did anyone know, those quiet moments with her sons would soon define the legacy she left behind. So what do you think about Princess Diana's startling letter to Prince William? We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.